The Kurukshetra war had ended. In 18 days, 4 million warriors had been slaughtered. What remained was an ash-covered wasteland, broken chariot wheels, and an eerie silence that carried more weight than the battle cries. Yudhishthira, the eldest of the victorious Pandava brothers, finally sat on the throne of Hastinapur. But looking at the empty chairs where his kin once sat, his eyes were entirely hollow. He had won the physical war, he held the crown, but the cost of this victory was the blood of his own relatives, teachers, and friends. The crushing spiritual guilt made his triumph feel indistinguishable from a total defeat. Then came the final blow. Word arrived from the coast. The golden city of Dwarka had been swallowed by the ocean. It had sunk to the bottom of the sea, marking the death of Lord Krishna and the closing of an age. Without Krishna, the kingdom was a shell. Yudhishthira realized that absolute political power and material wealth offer no comfort when the soul is in mourning. The throne was merely a heavy, gilded trap. The 5 Pandava brothers and their wife, Draupadi, reacted by shedding everything they owned. They stripped off heavy gold bracelets, their silk robes, and legendary armor, laying their weapons on a stone table for the last time. They initiated the Mahaprasthana Parva. This was the Great Departure, a pilgrimage into the deep wilderness from which no traveler ever returns. They walked out of the towering gates of their empire dressed in rough bark. As they headed toward the horizon, a single, ordinary stray dog quietly trotted up behind them and joined their ranks. They left behind the protection of walls and armies, entering a landscape where their titles and history meant nothing. On these slopes, a king and a common dog walk the same path, and only what they carry inside will determine who reaches the end. The temperate forests and burning deserts faded behind them. Now they faced the brutal, freezing slopes of the Himalayas. The scale of the mountains reduced the greatest warriors on earth to tiny, shivering specks in the snow. Their destination was Mount Sumeru, the gateway to heaven. To reach it, they had to traverse a razor-thin ridge, where a single lapse in concentration meant a fatal plunge into the abyss. Suddenly, Draupadi collapsed. Her knees hit the ice, and she never rose again. She did not die of the cold, but of her own internal partiality. Despite having 5 husbands, she had secretly favored Arjuna above the rest. That hidden bias became a weight she could no longer carry. Look at how this model visualizes their ascent to see what actually pulled them down. After Draupadi's fall, Sahadeva was the next to drop, crushed by his intellectual arrogance. Then Nakula fell, destroyed by his vanity and obsession with his own physical beauty. Even the 2 titans of the group succumbed. Arjuna, history's greatest archer, was dragged down by the pride he held in his unmatched skill. Finally, Bhima, a man with the strength of 1,000 elephants, collapsed under the weight of his gluttony and insatiable appetite. Through all of this, Yudhishthira kept walking. He heard his brothers fall, but he didn't look back. The path toward truth demands complete detachment. Any lingering attachment to the past acts as a physical anchor in the snow. The ice and the altitude were merely the setting. The greatest heroes in history were not killed by the mountain, but by the unseen, immense weight of their own human egos. Yudhishthira reached the summit of Mount Sumeru alone. His entire family lay frozen somewhere far beneath him. His only companion was the stray dog, still leaving small paw prints next to his boots. The sky split open. Lord Indra, the king of heaven, descended in a glowing golden chariot. He offered Yudhishthira something no human had been granted: passage into heaven while still in his mortal body. But there was a condition. Indra pointed at the dog and strictly forbade it from entering. He declared that a stray animal had no place in the pure realm of paradise. Yudhishthira looked at the god, then at the dog, and refused the offer. He stated he would rather reject paradise entirely than abandon a creature that had stayed loyal to him when everyone else had fallen away. As the choice was made, the animal's form began to ripple and expand. The stray dog dissolved into a blinding light, revealing Dharma himself, the god of righteousness. The creature that had followed them through the snow was the very law Yudhishthira had spent his life serving. Beauty, strength, and intellect failed on the slopes below. Loyalty and moral integrity are the only currencies recognized at the gates of Sumeru. Yudhishthira stepped through the golden gates. He was still in his mortal body, breathing, bleeding, and scarred, having accomplished what no other human in history had been permitted to do. But the glory was short-lived. Sitting right in front of him, lounging comfortably on a golden throne, was Duryodhana. The man who had publicly humiliated Draupadi, forced the war, and caused the deaths of millions, was smiling, soaking in eternal bliss. Yudhishthira felt a surge of visceral disgust. He turned his back on the throne and demanded the angels take him to his brothers. He was led away from the gold, down through narrowing corridors, where the light died and the air turned freezing cold. They reached the abyss. Through thick smoke and red firelight, he saw them. Arjuna on his knees, Bhima bound in chains, Draupadi reaching out toward him. The heroes of the age were burning and screaming in the pits of hell. Yudhishthira stared at the scene, unable to reconcile what he was seeing. A universe that grants a golden throne to a tyrant while chaining the righteous in fire is a universe without logic or justice. Yudhishthira broke. He fell to his knees in the ash, cursed the gods, and rejected their order. He declared he would stay right there in the flames to suffer with his family, rather than spend 1 second in a corrupt paradise. And just like that, the walls shattered. The smoke, the fire, and the screams vanished. Standing before him in a peaceful, brilliant light were his brothers and Draupadi, smiling in perfect divine forms. None of it was real. It was Maya, an illusion crafted by the gods to see if Yudhishthira would bend his morals for comfort or stand by his sense of justice, even if it meant choosing hell. Look at this karmic timeline to understand how the scales were actually balanced. When a person commits massive sins but a few good deeds, like Duryodhana, they get a brief taste of heaven to burn off their good karma before an eternity in hell. Conversely, the righteous experience a fleeting illusion of hell to wash away their minor sins before entering eternal peace. Every human attribute we rely on, intellect, physical strength, and self-confidence, will eventually fail us. In the end, the only thing that survives the climb is Dharma, doing what is right, even when it appears